Hi, Red Group. Today we're going to go ahead and start using our video recordings, and I'm going to go ahead and teach you our very first section of our first chapter. Today we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to start always with our I can statements. So the I can for today is that you will be able to use integers and absolute values in real life problems. First thing we're going to learn is integers and absolute values, what those two things mean in those vocabulary terms. You have your notes in front of you, so please follow along and fill out your notes as we go on. So the first section is always our vocabulary. We have two new vocabulary terms here. So in blank is a set of whole numbers and their opposites. So that is called an integer. So go ahead and write integer here. An integer is a set of whole numbers and their opposites. So it would be number 2 and a negative 2, a 3 and a negative 3, a negative 10 and a 10. It's the whole number and their opposites. Your second vocabulary term, it says in blank is the distance between a number and 0 on a number line. That is an absolute value. So go ahead and write absolute value in that blank. An absolute value is the distance between a number and 0 on a number line. So if we're looking at a number line, here's your 0, we have a negative 1. You can look it up in the front of the board. You will also see a number line above the board, so you can also look at that. When you see a negative 2, you'll notice that is 2 spots away from 0. Same thing, if we look at 2, that is 2 spots away from 0. So negative 2 is the absolute value would be 2. These bars are what you will see in all your problems. Those mean absolute value. They are not ones, so be careful. They aren't bars. They're absolute value bars. You'll see your notes here. It's an absolute value of A, so any number that goes in for A, the absolute value, if it's positive, it's going to stay positive. No matter what, it will stay positive. There is a negative inside your absolute value bars. The negative number remains a positive. It goes back into being a positive. So make sure you don't write a negative there. It is a positive. These are a little bit trickier. These two take some time to understand. If you have absolute value bars around a negative A or a negative 2, let's say, absolute value of a negative 2 is 2, but then you have this guy here, you have a negative. Don't forget to add that back on, so your answer would be a negative A. So you always take your absolute values before you put the negative on if the negative is on the outside. Same thing here, this is a positive A. The absolute value of a positive A would just be an A, or if that was, let's say that's a 2, then it would still be a 2. Then you add that negative back on, so it would be a negative. This is your key, so you may want to take a look at this because this will help you when you are trying to find if a number is positive or negative. You'll see we have a few examples over here. It says write the absolute values. Again, that's the distance between a number and 0 on a number line. So we're going to look at absolute values for the following. So these, remember, are your absolute value bars. Absolute value of negative 2, we set up here. If it's 2 this way, the same direction would be a regular 2. Absolute value of positive 2, we can look here. Oh, it's going to be positive. So this remains positive 2. Good. Now, negative 35. Absolute value of negative 35. It's going 35 to the left. That means we'd have to go 35 to the right. So this is just going to be a positive 35. Uh-oh, here's a tricky one. This is that tricky one where the negative is on the outside. When the negative is on the outside, remember we can throw it back on. So 5, the absolute value of 5 is going to stay 5, but we need to add this guy back on because he's outside of the bar. This is very tricky. Make sure you pay close attention to that. You may want to star that so you don't mess it up. We'll keep going. In example 2, it says write each set of values in order from least to greatest. And it says hint. This is something you're going to have to remember back and forth. Remember from day to day. Find the absolute value first, then put it in order. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Let's look at this. So this is number 1. We have 6, and we have the absolute value of -3, absolute value of 2, 10, and -4. It tells me here that first I want to find the absolute value of those numbers. So the absolute value of -3 would be 3. The absolute value of 2 would be 2. So we're good. So make sure you're writing all of them down so we have them all. Now, we need to put these in order from least to greatest. Our least, we can do this over here since I ran out of room. Our least is our negative. Remember, our negative is farthest to the left. It's farthest down the number line as it can go. So -4. Then, what comes next? Hopefully you already found it, and that would be 2. Then 3, 6, and 10. That would be least to greatest. So good job. Hopefully you're still following along. Number 2, we have a -10, 8, absolute value of 1, absolute value of -3, 20, and -5. Again, the first thing we need to do is to find our absolute values. So this would be 1 and an absolute value of -3. So the distance would still be 3. And then I'm going to write down the rest of my numbers so that I have them all in order. Go ahead and make sure you're caught up with me. Don't forget, you can always pause this video if you're falling behind and you need to catch up on your notes. Take your time. You have as much time as class, so make sure that you finish them. But take your time and pause it if you need. Okay, we need to put this one in order. So we're going to go back over here and write it in order here. Turn to my page. Farthest to the left of the number line. Look above my board. See which one goes all the way to the left. You will see that that's a -10. Okay, so we use that one. Then a -5, 1. Then you should be able to complete the rest. 3, 8, and 20. Good. Perfect. Now, I'm going to give you one more problem up here just to check and make sure you watched the whole video and you filled out your notes. So the last problem I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to compare a absolute value of -4, and you're going to say whether it's less than or greater than or equal to 4. Now that's kind of tricky. Make sure you pay attention. So this is either going to be this less than, greater than, or equals to. So you're going to fill that out. Then I would also like you to do it with 6, the absolute value of 6, compared to the absolute value of a -5. You can write those smaller in yours, but do those 2 problems so I know you paid attention during our video. Good job today. You should now know how to use the integers and absolute values in real life problems. You're going to do some problems from real life problems later on for your homework. Good job today.